If you think about it right now, what is your most important piece of gear when traveling for a fly fishing adventure? And on that same note, what's your most annoying piece of equipment that you have to travel with? If you were thinking of your fly rod, then we've got an amazing solution today on the podcast. We're going to break down the 6-piece travel rod and why this might be a game changer for you this year. This is the Wet Fly Swing podcast, where I show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for that big trip, and what you can do to give back to the fish species we all love. How's it going? I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. I grew up around a little fly shop and have created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in this country. I've also interviewed more of the greatest fly anglers and business owners than just about anyone out there. Jeff Ditsworth, Pescador on the fly owner and fly fishing travel expert, is going to walk us through his line of rods, including the 6-piece El Jefe and El Rey lines. We're going to find out what the most common misconception is about the 6-piece rod. We also discover how he was able to get a super high quality rod to the market in 6 pieces and why he created the Trout Hero bag for Trout Unlimited. Plus, you're going to get Jeff's morning routine. This might be a game changer for you. We're going to love it, Jeff, with the morning routine. I'm excited for this one today. You know, I love travel, so let's get into this one. Here we go. Jeff Ditsworth from PescadorOnTheFly.com. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing great. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for putting this together. We're going to jump into, a lot on your company, Pescador on the Fly. We're going to talk about this rod you have, which is pretty unique. I think 6 pieces, I think is something you don't see all the time out there. We're going to talk about that, maybe a little bit of travel. But let's just, before we get into all the Pescador, let's bring it back to fly fishing. How'd you get into it, and what's your first memory?
I'd say my first memory was probably camping with my dad and, my grandfather. They had fly rods, very, very old stuff, and we would fly fish all over the place when we would go camping. And most of my fly fishing started out on lakes, ponds, that kind of thing. So we'd be fishing for bluegills or bass or whatever. And it was a different way of fishing back then, when I was pretty little, that was kind of intriguing to me. And it was, I don't know, I got hooked pretty early.
Yeah. And what were the rods? I'm interested in the rod stuff. It's going to be cool today because we're going to talk about your rods, which I have one. They're great. They're really clean, and we're going to talk about that. But I'm interested also in the older rods because we just had a guest on, Chris Korich, who's a fly casting, champion instructor.
Yeah.
And he's the guy that basically coached Maxine McCormick, who was the 10-year-old who beat all the men in the world to be the champion, at 11. And he talked about the rods that they used, and they used these rods specifically, rods from like the 70s and 80s.
Interesting.
Which, because of the way they are full flexing, the fact that, and he talked about how, the full flexing rod is really nice because, especially for beginners, you get to feel the line, right? So I'm really interested in that conversation, today, because we're going to talk a little bit about this. But what were those rods back then? Do you remember what those were?
Yeah, back then, the first one I started using was my grandfather's bamboo rod. And that was just what I had, and that was what I was given to use. So it was bamboo.
Yeah, gotcha. So that's it, bamboo. And so there's talk about a full flexing rod. That's one of them. And so after that, what was the process like to getting up? Take it full. We'll skip ahead. Pescador. When does this come to be as a brand?
I'm an executive in the financial services space, and I've been traveling since, call it, the early 2000s, all over the country, training, mentoring, coaching, that kind of different people on specific, financial planning concepts. And I would find myself all the way from the West Coast, East Coast, Florida, all over the Midwest. And when I first started traveling, I thought to myself, what better opportunity than to explore some of these places I've never been and bring a fly rod with me. So I was bringing, my normal 4-section 32-inch tube with me, running through an airport in a suit, and back then a tie. And, it was just like, okay, this is kind of a pain. It's like, I'm going to go fish in the Marriott parking lot pond for a bass over here. And I'm like, I don't know, this is just too much of a pain. So I started searching to see if there was a really, really good travel rod. And I found these 7-section rods on the market through a pretty major brand. I don't think they make them anymore, but I thought that was the answer. And I got one, and I got it out and casted it. And it felt like a telephone pole. It was heavy. I hated it. I'm a gear guy, so I love nice equipment. So it just, I don't know, it didn't feel right. So I stopped bringing a fly rod with me for many, many years. And probably probably a decade went by, and I decided that I really wanted to maybe see if there was something that I could do inside the fly fishing industry that would make me fish more, that would make me get outdoors more. And, obviously, best case scenario, maybe we can make a little money on the side and start a business out of it. So I started reading, started doing tons of research, started trying to find some of these factories that the major brands are using to manufacture their fly rods. I found some of them and just probably went into 2 years of R&D mode where we started getting prototypes built. And I'm like, nope, too heavy. Nope, too stiff, that type of thing. And I finally had a factory make one that was pretty good. And we started off with a 7-section rod called El Cinco. And El Cinco was a 5-weight, 9-foot, 7-section rod. And it was way better than anything that I'd found on the market, but it still wasn't great. So, we launched with that product and, got some good traction, got our name out there, really partnered with TU to, give some back and do some good with the money that we were earning through sales. And that was fun because a good network of people there. And, from there, I didn't stop trying to make these rods more and more epic. And then we found another group that made a prototype for us with a 6-section rod, which is where the El Jefe series was built, which is now our mid-level section of rods. And El Jefe was a significant step forward for us with performance and, the feel, the weight. It was a great step forward. From there, we launched Econ 101, which is our entry-level set of gear. We're making both of those in 4 and 6-section rods because, 6-section rods aren't the right tool for the job all the time. But when you're traveling and maybe you're not going on a specific week-long fly fishing destination, you're going on a family vacation, you want to bring a great fly rod with you, the 30-inch tube or the 4-section rod probably isn't the right tool for the job, but these 6-section rods feel incredible.
Yeah, that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I mean, you might, I don't want to bring, 6 extra bags of stuff to go fish for 2 hours in one evening, but I can definitely bring a rod and a reel and a little pack, and I can go out and fish for a few hours after a meeting or, sneak out in the morning when you're on a vacation. But yeah, we moved. I think the next origin came when I still didn't stop trying to make an even more epic rod because, the El Jefe line really compares with rods that sell for around $500-$600. And I wanted to go after that, call it $1,000 rod that gets advertised everywhere in the market. And I wanted to build something that felt like those. So we went out and we kept, this is probably a 2-year project where we found actually an incredible state-of-the-art factory in Korea where we're making our El Rey series. And, I've had these rods in the prototypes in the hands of guides that fly fish and take people out, 150, 200 days a year. And, the rods that they're comparing that 6-section El Rey to would blow your mind.
Yeah. So these are high quality, higher end rods that are essentially not at kind of the higher end price.
Yeah, and I think one of our biggest value propositions, if not being scrappy and trying to find out, where these great rods are being made by the big brands, is the fact that we go direct to the angler. So, distribution costs for any product or service get expensive the more, call it middlemen we put in the middle in between the manufacturing and the end consumer. It's just a math question, right?
Yeah, it's the overhead.
Yeah, big brands pay somewhere between 40 and 60%. It just depends to distribute it. So if I can bring a higher quality rod to the market at a lower price point, I think that's a pretty good niche and it's working pretty well for us. So I think the consumers are loving the fact that they can, get 40% off a rod and not compromise performance or quality. It's been pretty fun for us.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's what's cool about, kind of how it is now. And we've heard this a lot on the podcast. People have talked about this is that, maybe, like I said, 40 years ago or whatever, 30 years ago, you couldn't buy it was hard to find that great rod. But now there's lots of great rods.
Oh, yeah.
There's lots of like high quality, almost everything's high quality now. So that's what's cool, right?
They've gotten better. I mean, I think, I could name which brands manufacture their rods in the same factories that we're using.
Exactly. That's what I mean about your rods. And when I see your rod, and I have one of your, do I have the El Jefe, the six piece?
You got the 6-section El Rey, which is our new rod that we're super proud of. This rod just got featured in Fly Fisherman Magazine's 2025 gear guide,
Oh, cool.
and we're stoked. It's
Oh
been
man,
fun.
that's amazing. Yeah. So the El Rey. So yeah, and when you look at it, I mean, it's definitely higher end. I mean, you could tell right away just by looking at it how And the other thing that you notice about it is that yeah, it's 6-piece, but I really don't see a drop from the 4-piece. I mean, when you put it together, all 6 pieces, you break it in half and you still have a 2-piece rod, right? You can still, it's just like a normal. And
For
the other
sure.
cool thing, like you said, is the 6-piece, you do notice that when it's a 4-piece, okay, that is packable and it works. But if you're on a backpack, it's sticking up at the top. The cool thing about this thing is, I mean, it's so small that you could throw it in pretty much most backpacks and it's gone. It disappears, right? Tell
Exactly.
me about that. Like that 6-piece, I don't think people probably realize how cool that is for travel. Give me a couple of examples of where that thing works so well.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're taking a standard carry-on a plane, it's going to fit inside that, which is awesome. Because, like, I think what you said a second ago is super important. That you can just stick that in a backpack and it disappears. It's not hanging out by 18 inches. Where
Exactly.
I went on a hike in Colorado earlier this summer up to a kind of a mountain lake, and I passed so many people with these giant tubes sticking out, and they're dragging on trees. And yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's some people, that's just a rod they have. That's what they're going to take. That's great, right? But there is a better way. And I'm smiling a little bit about when we first started our conversation earlier, when you're talking about casting competitions and national world champions and all that kind of thing. I think those are the only people out there that are honestly going to be able to tell the difference between a 4 and a 6 section rod.
Right.
I'll bet you 98, 99% of all fly fishermen aren't really going to tell the difference. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I'm saying that the technology is caught up in such a big way that the performance is there. And I mean, if you're not going to bring a rod with you because it's inconvenient to travel with, who loses there?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to lose because you're not going to fish. And these rods will make you fish more if you have them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. No, that's it. And that's cool. I think so. That's one big thing. Obviously, the travel, and that makes total sense. On maybe talk about that a little bit when you're traveling. What are your I mean, you guys have the rods. That's your focus. You've got the El Rey out. What other things are you telling people on travel as far as kind of getting ready? It sounds like you've done a lot of travel. Give us a couple of, like, you're going on an adventure, like a trip somewhere. What are your couple of travel tips you're telling somebody other than bring the 6-piece rod?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what I would say, and this is, call it, I also work in the risk management space in the world. So think about some of my philosophies that are kind of applicable there. But I almost never travel with only one rod.
Yeah, right.
I always bring 2 rods because you never know whether it's going to be a friggin' car door or a ceiling fan, or you're going to trip and fall. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the world. But think about, you've been planning this trip for a month. You hike a mile from the parking lot to get to this sweet spot, and you fall and snap a rod. Now, I think, I would never go out fishing without a backup rod, and that's just one of my philosophies. So if I'm definitely not going to travel a long distance without one. So what's great about the 6-section rods, like you said, you can throw it in a backpack and it disappears. It's not going to bother you.
Yeah.
I got some guys that say, listen, I'm going to fish my $1,000 rod, and I'm going to stick El Rey in my backpack, and if something happens, I got it, and I want to fish a nice rod. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'd say my first tip is really always have a backup rod. And that could be it doesn't mean I'm going to travel with 2 5-weight rods. I might throw a 3-weight in, and I might throw a 6-weight in, or whatever.
Yeah,
or
right.
I don't know. I love fishing streamers. So I'm a big fan of a 7 or an 8-weight. So I'm almost always bringing those rods with me.
Yeah. What are your go-to rods if you had to throw 2 in if you're going for trout?
Trout is a funny species, so it depends on where I'm going.
Right.
So if I'm going for big water in Montana, I'm always bringing a 6 and an 8, which, the 5-weight is fine because you might fish a 6-weight line on that. So it's, whatever you want to do. But if I'm going to a place where the water's a little bit smaller and I know the fish are a little bit smaller, I love fishing small rods. So I'm probably going to focus on a 3-weight the whole time, or smaller.
Gotcha. Cool. Are you more? I always love to talk about the even versus odd. You said 6, 8 weight. Are you more of a 4, 6, 8 even weights? Or are you more like 3, 5, 7, 9 weights?
It depends.
Yeah.
I mean, say I'm lucky because I can pretty much grab anything I want, right?
Right. Do you have on your lineup? Do you have all, what weights do you cover?
In my entire line right now, we go 0 to 10.
Oh wow, yeah, you got everything.
So the El Jefe line goes from 0 weight to 10 weight. We have 7, 8, 9, 10 in saltwater. and both 6 and 4 piece rods. And, we're doing some pretty cool stuff there. So we sell a lot of complete combos too. So for a lot of guys that get into our favorite sport, fly fishing, they look at it and they, sometimes they walk into a shop and they're like, okay, well, I just talked to the guy and basically in order for me to get started fly fishing, I got to spend $2,000. Yeah. And it's like, that's a pretty big barrier of entry to some people. So, I'm pretty happy to be able to offer a pretty sweet combo in the El Jefe line for $500 for the most part. And that's going to come with some flies, a pack, a bunch of accessories, and that kind of thing. And you're fishing right out of the box. So, yeah, your question of even or odd, it just depends. But I laugh when you ask the question because I know a lot of guys that are like, "Listen, I fish a 5 and a 7. That's it."
Right?
And
like
our El Jefe packable rods are going to be a little bit different than El Rey. El Rey will be one line specific, but the packable El Jefe rods are like a 5-6, right?
Yeah.
And generally speaking, on our El Jefe packable, our 3-4, our 2-3, I'm fishing the line up on it. So I'll generally fish like the 6-weight line on that 5-6 El Jefe. And, it cuts the wind a little bit better. It's, just a few little preferences. And I know guys that'll fish a 6-weight line on 5-weight rod all day or an 8-weight line on a 7-weight rod all day. It's just, I think it casts easier. So I think for guys that are just getting started, that's a nice little pro tip to just line up once and makes things easier, specifically when you get into the wind.
Yeah, when you get in the wind. And that's another interesting topic too. I know we've had some line companies on that have talked about that whole, and we've talked about that whole change in the industry where, some people line up 2 lines, and then, depending on what you have. But then the thing is, some of these line companies are actually making, all these specialized lines that are already lined up 2 lines.
Right.
Right. And so they don't even say it. They say like, this is the, whatever they call it, the streamer surge line. And it's already it's a 6-weight. It's actually an 8-weight, but it's called a 6-weight in the packaging.
Yeah.
So if you're to line up on that one, you'd be fishing a 9-weight. So it's this interesting thing, that's kind of going on. And I think that, like I said, the Chris Korich, I'm just hot off that episode that just went live this week, but it was so interesting because he talks about the nuclear arms race of the fly rod industry in the last 30 years, how people went from slower action rods to, Sage and everybody like faster, faster, faster. And everything's pretty fast action now. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's this super fast, I guess, that's that whole conversation there. But I think the tip you said is that now, and can you buy, do you have the whole package? Are you saying you have not just the rods, but you have the kind of the reels lines as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we private label our own fly line and it's ridiculously adequate. It fishes good. We also we have a partnership with Scientific Anglers. So we offer an upgrade option there.
Okay.
Scientific Anglers, just like a lot of these fly line companies, they make great stuff. So it's, it's an upgrade option. So some guys just, they want to fish a better fly line, and I have no issues with that. So that's why we got the partnership.
Yeah, that's it. No, and at Scientific Anglers, that was actually the company that we had on. We've talked to them quite a bit, and we were talking to their R&D about that, and he was talking a little bit about the history. We also had Bruce Richards on, who we're going to have back on. He's the guy that pretty much was there to start at Scientific Anglers.
Oh, very cool.
So Bruce Richards was episode 647, the 6-step method of perfecting your cast. He's obviously a casting master as well.
And guys like that, they're invaluable, right? But
yeah.
I do think one thing that some of these line companies and some of the rod companies are doing that's probably not helping us all is I think they're overcomplicating things by offering too many options. It's just my opinion. I think, when I talk to some people that have never fly fished, they're like, oh my gosh, I've been fishing my whole life. I'm never getting into fly fishing. It is way too complicated. And I adamantly disagree with that. And I think some of the marketing of our industry is making people have this perception that it's too complicated when it's really not. You just need to oversimplify things and get started and get on the water and then upgrade over time if you feel the need. But, when I talk to some people that say, yeah, I'm going to go out and I'm going to fish this tailwater and I'm going to bring like 6 different fly lines with me. And
right.
It's like, what are you doing, man? Well, what if this happens? It's like you fish your weight forward floating and you're going to be fine. It's like, come on, man, maybe bring a sink tip if you're going to fish a streamer. I don't know, but you don't need that many things. So it's just an industry like many industries that keep innovating and keep complicating things. And the stuff they're making is amazing, but it's unnecessary for 80 to 90% of anglers, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you don't need Probably you don't need 6 rods or even 4 rods in the boat. Probably a
Right.
couple is fine, maybe 3. But
Unless you're me and you're testing stuff or, yeah, I'm just
right.
kidding. But yeah, I mean, yeah, if I'm going to fishing in Montana, I'm probably going to have 3, 4 rods with me that are ready to go in the boat. And even if I'm fishing solo, and it could be, just to spend a little bit of time with this rod, or, I'm going to fish a 7 and an 8 weight just to see which one I like better, or, whatever. But I mean, just getting out there is what's important. That's what brings us all the peace that we all look for. In my opinion, with fly fishing, I mean, fly fishing is the coolest sport in the world because I think it's one of those things where you can't concentrate on other stuff if you're fly fishing. And we all need that, right?
Right.
Like there's so many little variables that you have to keep straight in fly fishing. And that prevents you from thinking about work or thinking about, something else. In my opinion, I don't get that from golf. I don't get that from bass fishing. I get that from fly fishing. And maybe I'm unique, but I think a lot of guys can relate to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally true. Yeah, it's kind of it's the meditative thing, right? The thing you're out there, you're zoned in and you're in the zone. And it's interesting because that, it's like we've talked about this quite a bit too, but the, professional athletes tend to, some of the best anglers are also, they were high level at other sports. But all sports need that focus if you're going to get to the highest level, right? And fly fishing is no different.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, I go back to some of the comments about, world casting competitions or fly fishing competitions like that. I mean, you can't see it, but I'm kind of rolling my eyes a little bit. Like, yeah, it's amazing. Those guys are doing such cool stuff. That's so awesome. But I don't know. To me, fly fishing isn't a competition. This is where I find Zen. This is where, where I can relax, and this is where I can become close to nature. And I don't know.
Exactly.
Like I said, those guys are amazing, but that's not for me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's kind of like I think a lot of people with the Team USA and the competition fly fishing, I think you hear that too a little bit, that the competition really isn't, although a lot of, new things have come out of that, obviously, right? I think the, whether it's the Golden Gate Casting Club or, Devin Olson or, Pete, some of those guys, a lot of cool techniques and things have come out. But
my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I got a good buddy of mine that's part of the team, and he's amazing. He has tons of fun on it. They do good stuff for people while they're out there. So I'm not throwing stones. It's just, that's just not my.
Well, it's your own thing. I mean, it's all of our own things. That's what's cool about it, right? I mean, you can go extreme and be like, I'm going to learn every piece, and I'm going to be an entomologist, and I'm going to, have 100 rods. Or you can just be like, hey, I got my El Jefe, 1 rod, and this is all I need. I got everything I need. Couple flies, boom, I'm going for it.
Yep, for sure. As I warn most people because I help a lot of guys get started in this industry because, or in the hobby of fly fishing, because we offer the complete turnkey package. So I warn a lot of guys kind of like with a wink that be careful because fly rods sometimes multiply. So I'm just warning you up front. So don't think that you're going to go get your 5 weight and that's going to be the only thing you get, because,
right.
You might end up with 3-4 rods over time, but that's okay, man. This is a healthy sport.
Yeah, over time for sure. What is the the name? So I mean, you obviously got Pescador on the fly, but the El Jefe, where does all that come from? Where did you get the name?
So I spent a lot of time in Mexico in Ascension Bay fly fishing for a permit, bonefish, tarpon, that kind of thing. And I grew up speaking Spanish in school and all that, and I don't know. I always had so much fun sitting on the boat with these guys trying to speak Spanish, and I'm going to say trying to speak Spanish with them and be like, okay, today's Tuesday. I'm not going to speak English all day. Let's do this, right? And we almost make it through a day. But pescador means fisherman, right? And my wife came up with the pescador on the fly, which means kind of like fisherman on the go.
Yep.
So the travel, the packable, all that. That's kind of like our mantra. This is what we're that's kind of our niche in the market, if you will, direct to the angler packable fly fishing gear. El Jefe means the boss, and El Rey is the king. So this is we've just named our gear that direction. Econ 101, I'm going to give myself a pass. I'm not going Spanish on that one. I wanted that one to be like, this is the foundation that I think a lot of people need to start on. There's a lot of, and I think the reason we started that line wasn't because that's where I wanted to focus. The reason I started that line is because I felt that there was way too much disposable fly fishing gear being built and sold on, some of the online retailers, insert name here. But I got my hands on a couple of these things because people would say, yeah, I'm just going to go buy one of these. And I'm like, all right. So I bought one online before I launched Econ 101. And I was like, this rod is horrible. And I'm pretty sure it's going to fall apart within a year. And, some people may have different experiences with it, but I was not a fan. So what I did is I started this because Trout Unlimited and we were talking about some issues. And I said, well, I think I can actually build a starter kit that's not disposable, that could be sold at a budget level. And it's not the cheapest stuff in the world, but this is also 2-3 notches up from your traditional starter gear. So it's something we could be proud of to put out there and help some guys, get into the fly fishing for less investment. We sell a ton to people for kids getting started in fly fishing, and it's gear they can have for a long time. So that's kind of that lineup. But
yeah, that makes sense. So you have the starter lineup is awesome. Talk about that with permit. Describe your a trip down there and maybe what rods you were bringing down there on that trip to Ascension.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, when I was going to be flying to Mexico for 6 days of flats fishing, primarily we were bringing, our 4-section rods. I would generally, again, I'm a gear guy, and this is before I started the company, but I would have a 7, 8, 9, 10 lined up on the boat for, whatever I was going on. My 7 would be my bonefish rod. My 8 weight would be, call it bonefish / permit. 9 would be my traditional permit rod, and 10 would be for small tarpon. That's kind of like what I was normally bringing. But the last couple of times I've been down there, I was fishing our 6-section El Jefe rod. So I had a couple of those lined up. And then, we also have 4-section rods. So I had those El Jefe salt rods out on the last time I was down there, and they were fantastic. So our El Jefe reels are all saltwater capable. So they have fully sealed drags. So you can fish them in fresh or salt. And that's kind of a nice little thing where, I'm generally fishing an 8 weight, what might look like a saltwater rod for streamers, just because, I don't need a freshwater 8 weight and a saltwater 8 weight. It's, the same fast action rod. So.
Gotcha. Give me a little rundown on where you're going from here, new rods and new things coming up.
We're actually in the process of doing some pretty cool stuff with all of our manufacturing. So after starting to meet that new factory in Korea that's making our El Rey series, we have prototypes being built right now. I've seen one of them, and I'm going to move the production of the El Jefe rods to that factory in Korea. So the El Jefe line will go over there, and we're gonna rebuild that one in this Korean factory. The factory's incredible. They make ridiculously good gear. So I'm super stoked on that one. So that'll start happening here shortly. We're going to expand the El Rey series, and we're going to build probably 3 or 4 more El Rey rods. Right now I got 4 weight, I got 5 weight. We're building a 7 weight right now in the 6-section. And then you'll probably see 3 more of those launch next year. And then we're also going to be building 4-piece in the El Rey, just because they're just ridiculously good rods. And a lot of guys that are just, traditionally fishing and not traveling, they love that 4-piece rod. So we're going to build them. And, it's kind of like my in tongue-in-cheek comment, like, look, we also built $1,000 rod. You just don't have to pay $1,000 for it. So yeah, we're pretty excited about that. I've got a new completely waterproof pack.
Oh, nice.
That it is ridiculously cool. We're probably 30 days out, so that's going to hit the shelves here in probably beginning of December 2024. So super excited about that. Think about that. You get a lumbar pack, and there's a lot of cool ones out there on the market, but you start adding this direct to consumer pricing, and we can knock 40% off the retail price of our competitors just by going direct. So we're stoked on that one. I think it's going to be providing a huge value to our customers, and I think it's going to attract a bunch of new customers for us as well, because you can get a really, really high quality gear for a lot less money, and that's been fun. So we're selling flies now too.
Okay.
So I've got a project with my son right now to kind of get him a little bit more involved in the business. So he's learning a little bit of entrepreneurialism. So he's getting paid to distribute the flies for us, which has been fun. So it's a cool way to, weave my 15-year-old son into our business and teach him about, having a good value proposition. And the cool thing is like for, nymphs, midges, dries, that kind of thing, I've got a ridiculously good network of fly tires, and they can tie flies for us for a really reasonable price. We don't make a lot of money on the flies, and, we use them really as leads, so we break even pretty much on the flies, but we sell them for 75 cents a piece.
Oh, wow.
and we sell them in 3-packs. So like say 2 1/4, you're going to get three bead-headed woolly buggers that are really high quality.
Huh.
So that's pretty solid, and it's a cool little project to get my son more involved in the business. So it's a great value. We're selling large articulated streamers for $2 each or $6 for 3 of them. And you think about that, you go into a shop, that's going to cost you $6 for one or $12 for one. I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff. So providing good value, and I think the market likes it. So we're happy to do that, and that's going to expand for us as well.
Nice. That's awesome to hear. So you got a bunch of good stuff going here. So we talked, basically you're going to have your pack run. And so on the 6 versus the 4, it feels like the 6 is pretty equal to a 4-piece. Do you feel that that's the case on your lineup, or is it just some people maybe don't need the 6-piece if they're kind of not doing all the travel?
Call it biases that are out there. I mean, you go back and you mentioned, 30 years ago, the only way you're going to be able to buy a fly rod is walk into a specific fly fishing store, and that's not the case anymore.
Right.
Back then, people, when they're going to buy a fly rod, there was the same issue of, I'm not going to buy a 4-piece rod. I want a 2-piece rod because 4-piece rods suck, right?
Yeah.
And you and I both know that's hasn't been the case for 20 years,
right,
or more, right? But there's still people out there that are like, oh, you have these old biases in your head that this is no good. And I think once people figure out that the 6-section rod casts just as good as a 4-section rod, if you're buying the right one, I think they're going to open their mind to making sure that they have one of these in their arsenal or 2 of these in their arsenal of fly rods. I mean, again, if you're out in Colorado and you got your 4-piece rod in your truck, there's no need to get a 6-piece rod. You're already set. So we wanted to be able to offer the 4-section rod because people want them.
Yeah, people want them. Yeah, exactly. Just like back in, like you're saying, that people wanted the 2-piece.
Yeah, for sure. I fish 4-piece rods too. But like if I'm traveling or packing, I'm always bringing 6-section rods. And even if I'm out and about, I have a 4-section or a 6-section tube on my pack as a backup rod at all times. So even if I am fishing a 4-section rod, I definitely have my backup rod or rods with me. So, I mean, to your point, could you replace the 4-section rod with 6-section rods if you wanted to? And I got guys that do that.
Yeah.
But I think, it's the right tool for the right job, right? I don't mind bringing the 4-section rods. They're just sitting in the back of my car.
Exactly.
But if I'm packing somewhere, I'm 100% bringing 6-section rods with me because they travel so perfect and they fish great.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And keeping on the gear a little bit, back to, kind of the travel. So we're on our trip. What's your essential? You've done some travel, and what is your essential gear other than obviously having the 6-section rod? What's on that bag when you're carrying it on that you're not going to leave without?
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. You got to have flies, right flies for the right place, right? So your staple of flies that you're going to bring everywhere you go. It's fly boxes. You got to have your leaders and tippet, all your little accessories. Like you might need some weights, you might need some fly line dressing, all that kind of stuff. I have a very, very small pack that we sell.
Yeah, is that the Versa pack?
The Versa pack, yeah.
Yeah, that looks sweet. Yeah, so the Versa pack is tiny, and I love too the tiny packs because I'm kind of more the simplicity, and that looks like that's kind of big enough for what? Just like a nice fly box and some flies and some leader.
Couple fly boxes, everything you need in there. I mean, I'm a minimalist by heart, so like I play tennis too. And I always laugh because there's guys that I play tennis with that are bringing these tennis racket bags that have the capacity to put 12 rackets in.
Right.
I'm like, okay, when was the last time, one of us guys that are middle-aged playing amateur tennis needed more than one racket?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I have 2 in case I break a string, but it's like there's no situation on the planet where I would ever need 12. But what happens is these guys fill these bags with stuff that they never use. So I unpacked one of my bags like 4 years ago, and I looked at it, I was like, I haven't used any of this stuff in 5 years. And I think your fly fishing bags, the giant ones, are the exact same way. So you got stuffed with everything that you may need, but you never do. So I love traveling small. And, when I'm just going on a quick trip, that Versa pack is the most perfect day pack. It's got every room for everything you need. You can stick a fly reel in there if you wanted to. I mean, it's not huge, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't take up a ton of space. So you can throw the rod, the reel, and that pack in there, and you got everything you need for a trip. I actually use it in combination with that new lumbar pack, the waterproof one.
Okay.
So it's, that stays on my back and it holds the net, and it has a water bottle holder and all that stuff on it. And then this kind of comes up front like a, call it chest pack,
Yeah.
or, off to your side. And that is where I keep my flies a lot of times. And if I'm fishing all day or I'm hiking in somewhere, I'm probably taking both with me just so I can bring some more flies just in case. But yeah, I mean, that VersaPack is sweet.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the VersaPack, sweet.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I was going to say when I'm traveling is, waders or no waders. So obviously it depends on where you're at, depends on the weather. It depends if you can wet wade. It depends if you're going to, just stay dry. There's a lot of kind of like what ifs there. I love traveling with waders.
Yeah,
I mean, I say that kind of tongue in cheek. I like having them with me because like traveling with them is kind of a pain because then, you're always bringing like a kitchen bag or something like that to wrap them up so you're not soaking the rest of your gear if you're checking your bag or you're carrying on your bag or whatever. But I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've traveled with a suit in my carry-on, waders and boots, and my fly fishing gear, and I still have everything I need for my meetings as well as my, call it, extracurricular fly fishing afterwards. And it can be done, but you got to be pretty methodical about your packing, and it takes a little bit of time. But packable boots are a pretty cool thing.
Oh yeah, what are those? Are those like you make like neoprene things or?
Yeah, so you can go a couple different ways. You can look at there's a few brands out there that make like water shoes. And they're like tennis shoes, I'm pretty sure Sims makes some. I haven't bought theirs yet, but I've definitely looked at them. But they're more of like a hiking shoe versus a fly fishing boot. And so you can kind of like smash those up a little bit, and then you can still lace them on there so they're not going to come off. So that's kind of a cool invention. And obviously those are great for wet wading too. Because I mean, if you can get away with wet wading and not bringing waders, amen. I mean, that's beautiful. But if you're going to be fishing somewhere in February, that's dangerous. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So it's know your conditions, know your surroundings, and all that kind of good stuff. But if I can bring waders and boots, I'm doing it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I love wearing waders. That's for sure. Waders and boots is good. So this is awesome, and we're talking gear. What about your kind of your luxury, your packing that maybe isn't fly fishing gear? What's your one luxury item you're taking on that you're throwing in there along with your boots and everything?
It's funny because like the only thing that comes to mind for me is, I mean, obviously polarized glasses.
Yeah.
And I'm a Costa Del Mar guy. So I've always been using those since I got turned on to those 20 years ago or whatever. So that's kind of fly fishing gear, but I'd probably say my iPad.
Oh yeah.
Man, that thing is everything to me. I got an iPad Pro, and
yeah. Do you take an iPad and a laptop or just the iPad?
I don't travel with a laptop. I just use the iPad, and obviously that works with your phone. So your phone's now your camera and all that good stuff. And these phones today, their cameras are so good. So I'd say my technology package is pretty minimalist. But I'm an Apple guy. I have been forever. So it's
Yeah, me too. Well, I haven't been forever. I was a PC guy until about 8 years ago or whenever it was, and I made the switch. And ever since I made the switch, it's like, yeah, it is a pretty good switch.
Yeah, what was funny for me is I had gotten an iPhone. I didn't get the very first one, but I laughed about it because this is back in the day when you would have I had like an iMac, but big one that was just like the desktop. And I remembered going to buy a new phone, and I went and bought the new iPhone, and I don't remember which version it was. And I thought to myself, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'm so excited. That was back when you had to like plug it into the back of it to sync it, right?
Yep.
So I bring it home. I'm super excited. I plug it into the computer, and the thing says, your computer is too old to download the new iTunes software that you need to run your new phone. And I thought to myself, I was like, you evil geniuses. So like I had to, after buying the phone, I did two things. I went back to the Apple store and I bought a brand new computer so I could actually use my new phone. The next thing I did is I bought Apple stock.
Oh, right.
And both of those decisions were pretty good.
Right.
Back then. And we're talking like 2008. So that was a good run. But it was like, so it's just, it's a funny world how things give you clues and what to look for. And that was a clue to me. And I was like, you evil geniuses, I'm going to have to go buy a new computer. So I use the phone I just bought.
Right. I know. Well, that's exactly what Apple has done. They get you in the Apple universe.
They made themselves essential in my life, and good for them, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're good. Well, Steve Jobs was definitely, they call him, whatever, right? He was pretty much a genius, regardless
Yeah,
of
no doubt about it.
what you think about him.
Yep.
Good. Okay, so we got some bonus travel stuff in there. Well, anything else you're thinking about? We want to touch base on about Pescador on the Fly we missed today.
I don't know, man. We're a very small business. So what I love the most is when, and I say this humbly because I'm really proud of it and I don't talk about it a lot, but every once in a while I love going onto the website and reading all the reviews, and it comes out really, really clean that people really enjoy their experience with us. I'm a very hands-on guy. I love helping people. I still answer our phone. I still answer the majority of our emails. I help people all the time figure out which gear is right for them. I love doing it because I love getting guys into fishing, and just because it's been such a great sport to me. It makes me feel close to my dad, my grandfather, and my dad just passed away this summer. So it's like fly fishing to me is a very, very personal thing. I have so many memories in it, as do a lot of other fly anglers, right? So when I shared kind of like my tribute to my dad that I wrote up that actually got published in one of Trout Unlimited's
Wow.
Colorado Chapters magazine, I still kind of cry every time I read it a little bit, but that's all real stuff, man. We're real people out here. We're a cool family business. We're growing. We're really appreciative to guys like you that are kind of helping us get the word out. And, it's been a really fun little journey. And we've probably been rolling about 8 years now, which is, statistically speaking, a pretty good sign in a business that we're up and running. But, people break rods and we take care of them. You know what I mean? So you look at some of the industry where, somebody breaks a rod and they know that they're going to get that new section of the rod back somewhere between 3 and 6 months. Yeah. And we're shipping out new stuff and triaging these situations for guys to get them back on the water in 2 days. So customer service matters and we care about it. So I think that's probably something that I don't brag about enough, but I'm super proud of what we do there.
Love that. Yeah, I think the customer service and your family, you said a lot of things there that are so key, and the reviews, people, like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? People that are loving the products, and that shows there. So that's great to hear. Well, I think this has been good today. Let's take it out of here real quick with our conservation shout out. And you've mentioned it a couple of times, Trout Unlimited, who's a great organization out there. Let's start off with that. Tell us a little about TU. What have you done with them? Like, are you guys doing projects, or give me a little info there?
Yeah. So at the very beginning, before we had made any money at all, I wanted to use a piece of our revenue to support Trout Unlimited. And I'm a firm believer in kind of like dividing and conquering. And Trout Unlimited does an amazing job of fighting for projects that mean something to anglers, right? They're trying to protect the water that our fish live in, right? And they're trying to give us better access to fishing, and they're doing some really cool projects, like some of these dam removal projects that are they're at the forefront. Fighting Pebble Mine is another one up in Alaska. Alaska is a near and dear place to my heart. I've been up there many, many times with my dad. It's, fighting some of these projects. I love being involved in them, but I also love supporting groups that do the work. And when I support Trout Unlimited, I know that they're getting jobs done, and they allow me to focus on what's near and dear to my heart, more, stuff that I'm good at. They're good at that. They got that. I'm good at what I do for my family, and I got that, right? So a couple different things that I've done with Trout Unlimited, other than, diverting a chunk of our revenue to that organization to help, clean water support and all that good stuff, is through a conversation with a number of their executives over the years, I came up with the concept of the Trout Hero bag. So the Trout Hero bag is nothing ridiculously amazing, but basically what it is it's a mesh bag that's reusable that somebody can put in their pack with the absolute intention of every time they're out on the water, filling that thing up with trash and carrying it out.
Nice.
So not just carry out what you're bringing out there, but bring a little bit more out. And I love Trout Unlimited sponsored stream cleanups. Those are great once, twice a year. But I think the compound effect of tens of thousands of anglers doing this every single time they're on the water is actually bigger than a one-day event with 30 guys. So we built these bags using some of our connections overseas, and I give those to Trout Unlimited chapters at our cost. So no profit whatsoever. And so like we send thousands of those out to Trout Unlimited chapters every single year. And then on our website, there's a individual listing for the bags, and there's a coupon right on the listing, which you don't see very often, for a free one. So you pay shipping, and we get you your own for free. And so it's a way where we're able to help support different organizations in these stream cleanup efforts, and that's something we're really proud of. That partnership's been pretty cool.
Nice, love that. Yeah, that's I think we've talked some about the stream cleanups, and it's a real important part, and I think it's not just about picking up the garbage, but just getting people aware, of all the things that are going on right there. So that's really amazing.
Totally agree.
So this has been good. So well, give me one more on, just the six. I want to go back to I always say six piece. I think you say six sections. The same thing, right? A piece, a section.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So the 6-section rod, I just think it's, I do kind of think it is a game changer for the travel, because like we said, because it just disappears in your stuff. What do you think, the most common misconception about the 6-piece rod, or you know what I mean? Like that people aren't aware, because I know a lot of people use 4-piece, but probably a lot of people listening don't have a 6-piece. So what do you think is that misconception they have?
I think the fact that the original 6-section rods, or the original 7-section rods, were not remotely as good as they are now. And I think it's just like anything that, the first product on the market, it's innovative. It's very cool. Kind of like my El Cinco rods, right? Those 7-section rods.
Oh, yeah. Or like the phone. You go back to Apple, the iPhone was not the first cell phone ever, right? But they perfected it.
Right. Exactly. So we've worked at that over years to get it out there. But again, I'll bet, 96, 97 out of 100 people, if you handed this 6-section El Rey rod to, they're not going to be able to tell the difference between that and a very, very high-end 4-section rod. And that's something we're really proud of. So the fact that the biggest misnomer is that people do not think that they perform well, and these rods are ridiculously good.
Yeah, I think that's a good take home. I always love to get a little bit of music out of you, or podcasts before you get out of here. Are you listening to more podcasts or more music when you're on a road trip?
Road trip. So I'm a combination. I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Oh yeah, audiobooks, cool.
So it's either an audiobook or music. And I've been into country a little bit lately.
Yep.
So big fan of Chris Stapleton, big fan of Zach Bryan and some of these guys. But yeah, Tyler Childress, but those are kind of like some of my newest stuff. But I keep drifting back to Jack Johnson and John Mayer and Dave Matthews and some of these other guys. But it's I think being a fan of music makes you pretty damn lazy now, because you can just throw Spotify on and be like, okay, I want to listen to something like this. And all of a sudden they're throwing you new stuff. And it's like, hey, I like this stuff too. So
I know. I love it. Yeah. Spotify is a game changer.
I methodically listen to and consume books and podcasts, because daily education to me is kind of a mantra. I thoroughly believe that, the sum of our success is built up in our daily routine. So, my daily routine starts out in the morning with a pretty cool little process that I run through every day, and it keeps me centered, it keeps me grounded, and keeps me focused on what's most important. So the sum of our success is built into our daily routine. So
what's that? I've heard of the. I'm not as good with the morning routines, but I know there's some of those out there. Give us a little snippet. Can you give us a little snippet on what your daily morning routine's like?
During the week, it's a little more regimented than not, but I get up fairly early, and I put coffee on, and I actually use an app called Calm.
Oh yeah, Calm. Yeah, I know that app.
Yeah, and they have like a 10-minute daily meditation.
Yep, it's great.
And for me, it grounds me. But right before I do that, I read a book called The Daily Stoic, and it's one day. It's kind of a weird thing, but it's basically every day there's a new message. And you read it every single day, and there's a date, like, today's date is the 13th of November. So I read the 13th of November section. It takes 30 seconds. And it's just good stuff that kind of like, I think centers you on what's important in life. And then I do the daily calm for about 10 minutes. And my son wakes up, and right when he wakes up and he gets in the shower, I jump on the hydro, the rower, and I row for 10 minutes.
Oh, nice.
And so I try to get my little grounding when the house is super quiet. I do my row for 10 minutes. Then he comes down, he has breakfast, we hang out. And when he has a school permit, he's 15, he drives to school. So I see him out and I go for a short run. I run like a mile and then I walk home a mile and I listen to a book. So that gives me,
Awesome.
20 minutes of learning along with a little bit of heart rate up, and I get back, shower, and then I'm off. So that whole little thing from wake up until I'm back and showering is probably about 2 hours, in all honesty.
That's so cool.
I get about 30 minutes of cardio and
yep, and you're done. So that's the thing, you break it out. So by that time you're feeling good, you got your exercise in, you're ready to roll.
I'm ready to roll. Yep. So that's what my morning looks like during the week.
That's so cool. That's a great routine.
I keep a couple of those things on the weekend. I don't do the row and I don't do the run. Usually I'm playing tennis on the weekend. So I'm playing tennis for an hour and a half, 2 hours every day. So it's all good.
I love it. That's some inspiration for all of us here. Get the morning routine. And tell me this, I'm also interested in your kids. So my kids are a little bit younger, but what does that feel like? Your kid's driving. Are you are you totally freaked out on the first day when he like on his own? Are you always worried every day?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, this is real stuff, right? So
yeah, because the phones, I mean, think about it. We're the same. I mean, adults are just as bad. I mean, you got the phones in the cars. I mean, how do the kids like that would just freak me out right now thinking about that.
It's funny because I actually think the kids are better at not looking at their cell phones than we are.
Oh, wow. Nice.
I really do. Cause I don't know. It's like we grew up in I remember back in the day, 20 years ago, driving around with a BlackBerry trying to type when I'm driving in the interstate
right.
to Detroit. I'm like, am I the stupidest person in the world? And it's like, yes, I am. So I put this thing down. I'm not going to do this. And I luckily never had a problem. And now I don't do it anymore because it's just obviously so stupid.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was in my early 20s, it's like, that's just like what you did. And I'm just like, what's the matter with us? But I think the kids today, for the most part, don't do it. Like when you're driving somewhere and you look up and you see some idiot with their face right in their cell phone and they're driving next to you, generally speaking, it's not a 16-year-old kid. It's like a 20-something. I don't know. It's just, maybe that's just what I noticed. But no matter what it is, they still make you nervous. No matter what they're doing, you still worry. But that's like our job, right? You're trying to do our best to prepare them for life. And some days we win, some days we don't.
Well, I remember my brother, when my kid was like one, or no, before, actually when my first daughter was born, he's like, the first year you're just trying to keep him alive.
Yeah.
Like he kind of said that tongue in cheek, but it's actually not just the first year, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You're their entire life, you're sitting there basically doing that because it's like, there's always something out there, whether it's I don't know, right? You're worried about drugs, alcohol, other kids being in that zone,
sure.
Them getting in a car with somebody, right? All this stuff. But no, I appreciate it. I think being a parent, I think a lot of people that listen here, there's a good chunk that, maybe their kids are already out of the house, but for those that have them in or younger, I think it's a scary moment, but cool to hear your kid's on it and he's driving on his own.
It's for sure scary, but I don't know. It's like, I always laugh. I think my wife gives new mothers like the best advice ever. And, I heard her do this, like when we first got married. We've been married for over 16 years now, but, I think it was the best advice I've ever heard her give a new mother is trust your own instincts and don't listen to everybody.
Right.
And I think that is so profound because what's odd about us as parents and human beings or whatever, somehow we kind of know what we have to do.
Yeah.
Right. And it's amazing we've survived as a species without, the internet or whatever. But it's like, you don't need all this extra advice. You'll know what to do when the time comes, and trust your instincts. So I love her advice on that one.
That's a great, I'll remember that one too. Because I think in this day and age, with all the information and misinformation out there, sometimes you just got to be like, I'm going to put that aside, not even look at that stuff and just trust my instincts, right? That's great advice. Cool. This is awesome, Jeff. Well, I think we'll leave it there for today. We'll send everybody out to pescadoronthefly.com. And I think, I'm excited for everybody to take a look at these 6-section rods and get them in their hands and stuff, because I think it is awesome what you have going. So, I appreciate all your time today and all the good work you're doing with TU and everything out there.
That's great. Thanks, Dave, man. I had a lot of fun today, so thanks again.
All right, quick call to action for you. If you are fired up about this, if you want to check it out, the 6-piece rod, the 6-section rod, versus the 4 and the difference here, check in with Jeff, pescadoronthefly.com, and get a look at this thing, and you'll find out why this is so nice for traveling. Like he said, even if it's just a backup rod, in your suitcase, in your pack-on that just goes with you, doesn't stick out anywhere. This is your chance right now. This is going to make your life 100% easier, I guarantee it. Here we go. And also, if you get a chance, before we get out of here, please follow this show. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can do that. Spotify, any podcast app. If you're listening out there, check in with me as well. I want to hear from you, Dave at wetflyswing.com. We got a big trip going on right now. We're looking for a couple of people to join Schultz Outfitters. And we're headed to Michigan to fish smallmouth bass, one of the great places, one of the great outfitters, Schultz Outfitters. We had James on recently to talk about the trip. It's all set up and ready to go. If you want big smallmouth bass, a chance to learn this program and take it back to your home waters, now's the time. You can go check in with me, Dave at wetflyswing.com, and you can get some information there. I'll let you know what we have available. All right, I got to get rolling. Hope you have a great morning. Hope you have a fabulous afternoon or a super duper evening. Look forward to talking to you and seeing you on that next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.